This is Android Basics, in which we bring you up to date on the things that you should know to use your Android phone.
Now we turn to our Android Basics section, and we continue our tour of the Settings app. And this week it's a fairly chunky section. We're looking at the whole system, language and input, gestures part of the app. Warren, I know you've recorded a little preamble. Is there anything you want to say before we hear that?
Well, the system setting is a very important portion of our device, and this is where you go in and basically customize your device the way you would like to use it, whether you want to hear sounds of some sort. For example, if you wanted to say when the phone is ringing, I want to just flip my phone over and let it just shush or whatever the case may be. Or when I lift up my phone, let it come alive or come to life or things like that. And we've heard this a lot of times, especially on our mailing list, and people saying, hey, my phone is waking up at random times, or, something happens and my phone comes on. I did not even hit the power button. Some kind of ghost hiding somewhere in my phone. So here's where you can go to find those things. So I think it's important that we do that. And also, time and date and all of that. That's where you go to change those things if you want to manually do things. You travel to another country, maybe something happened. I think someone had said that they were at some location and they were not seeing the location they were in or things like that. So this is a very important part of the phone and part of the system settings that we need to go in and customize things to our liking. So that's what I'm saying about it. And then we'll discuss some of the things that we think are of great importance to us.
Thanks, Warren. And here is that brief demonstration of this section of settings.
I am now in the system settings and will now navigate my way to system, languages, gestures, backup, and more. Here's what I'm talking about.
System, languages, gestures, time, backup.
Let's go ahead and tap here.
System. Navigate up, button, out of list.
I am now in the system, and I'm going to first of all show you all the items that are in here, and then I'll look at some of the items that I think are of great importance. And after I'm done with showing you the overview, then the podcast crew will then discuss some of these items that we think are of great importance. So here I am in the system area, and I will navigate my way through the items that we find here. Here's what we got.
Languages and input, Gboard, in list.
The first item that we come across is languages and input. And we hear Gboard, meaning that my default input method is Gboard. Let's go on and tap on this and see what else we find in languages and input.
Languages and input, navigate up, button, out of list.
Here's what we find on this screen.
Preferred language, heading, in list.
The first heading we come across is the preferred language heading. And below that,
languages, English United States.
We hear languages, English United States, and it depends on the system language that you have. So if you're in a different system language or a different region, that would say whatever language it is that is your choice as the default. Let's go ahead and tap here though, because it's here that you could add another language in the event that you happen to be one of those people that speak multiple languages. Let's go ahead and tap here.
Languages, navigate up, button, out of list.
And here we got two items. So the first one is like the English United States, and the second one will be the add language.
English United States 1, in list.
It says English United States 1, meaning I only have one language in there. And below that we have add language.
Add a language button out of list.
Add a language. Tapping here.
Add a language. Navigate up button. Showing items 1 to 12 of 210.
And here we have about 210 languages you can pick from. And some of the examples include the following.
Afrikaans in list. Agam. Akan. Inari Sami. Asturian. Azerbaijani Latin. Bambara.
There you go. So we got different languages in here. And now I'm going to go back. And if you wanted to add any of these, all you need to do is simply tap on it and the download process will begin. I'll now go back.
Languages. Add a language button out of list.
Like I said, these are the only two items that we find here, the default system language and add a language. I'll now go back to the previous screen.
Languages and input. Languages, English United States in list.
Moving down, here's what we got.
App languages, set the language for each app.
App languages set a language for each app. In other words, if you speak another language, for example, and you want to change that app to that language, or a particular app that you want to switch to a different language, or if you have installed some app that comes in another language, if it supports other languages, you could tap here to go change that to English, for example, or whatever language you want to change it to, provided that that app supports that language. Let's tap here and see what we're talking about.
App languages. Navigate up button out of list. Showing items 1 to 10 of 30.
We here showing items 1 to 10 of 30. In other words, there are 30 apps here that I could switch to another language, and all of these feature, though, is dependent on the app. Most apps don't, and some of the apps support other languages, and most of the ones that do happen to be the system apps. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here's what we got.
Only apps that support language selection are shown here, in list.
And we got
Calculator, system default. Calendar, system default. Chrome, system default.
I'm going to scroll down, see if we find some non-system apps that support translating into another app, or another language, rather.
Google, system default. OfficeSuite, system default. Pocket, system default.
Here's Pocket, one of those examples, a third-party app that supports other languages.
Pocket Casts, system default.
Pocket Cast. Let's tap on Pocket Cast, for example.
App language. Navigate up button out of list. Showing items 1 to 11 of 18.
We heard showing items 1 to 11 of 18, meaning that there are some 17 or 18 languages that Pocket Cast could be switched to. Here are some of those languages, or actually, let's go through all the apps that the Pocket Casts support. Here's what we got.
Suggested.
And under the heading that says suggested, we got
Checked, system default. English United States. Spanish United States. All languages. German.
got German,
English. Spanish. French. Italian. Dutch, in list. Norwegian Bokmål. Swedish. Russian. Arabic. Japanese. Simplified Chinese.
and that's the last one in here. So if you want to switch to any of those languages, you could just tap there to switch to that language. I am now going back to the previous screen.
App languages. Pocket Casts, system default, in list. Showing
Now go
items
back
8 to
again.
18 of 18. Languages and input. App languages, set the language for each app, in list.
Moving down,
Keyboards, heading.
we have keyboards. Moving down,
On-screen keyboard, TalkBack Braille keyboard, Google Voice Typing, and Gboard.
on-screen keyboard. In other words, here you can go in and enable other keyboards if you've installed some. And for example, if I tap here,
On-screen keyboard. Navigate up, button, out of list.
And here are some of the keyboards that I have. Some have been enabled and others haven't. Here's what I got.
Gboard, multilingual typing, in list.
And to the right of each of these would be an on-off switch. So if I move my finger to the right,
Gboard, switch, on.
move my finger down,
Advanced Braille keyboard.
down,
Bitmoji keyboard, English
Down.
US. BRLTT, Chroma keyboard, English, Google voice typing, Grammarly, multilingual typing.
So as you can see, I have a bunch of them. I could scroll down for more.
Microsoft SwiftKey Beta keyboard, Microsoft SwiftKey keyboard. OpenBoard, English US. Smart Braille.
As you can see, I have a bunch of them. I'm going to go back. And like I said, though, to the right of each of those is the on-off switch. For example, if I move my finger to the right here,
OpenBoard, switch, off.
I could turn that on by tapping there.
Smart Braille, switch, off.
Okay, let's go back.
Languages and input. On-screen keyboard, TalkBack Braille keyboard, Google voice typing, and Gboard.
As we move on down, here's what we got.
Physical keyboard, not connected.
Physical keyboard not connected because I don't have any in place right now. Moving down,
Speech, heading.
we have the speech heading, and here's what we got.
Voice input, speech services by Google.
Voice input, and we hear speech services by Google. That's what I'm using.
Settings, button.
To the right of that is the settings. Let's go ahead and tap on the settings.
Speech services by Google. Navigate up, button, out of list. Showing items 1 to 4 of 4.
Okay, we are on this screen now, and here's what we find.
Speech services by Google.
Moving my finger down.
Add a language, manage offline languages, in list.
Add a language, manage offline languages. In other words, if you tap here, you could choose a language that you can download for offline support. In the event that you are doing something without internet access, you will be able to have access to that language that you've selected. And below that,
Auto-update languages, Wi-Fi only.
and
Advanced, downloaded languages.
advanced downloaded languages. If I tap here, and if I've downloaded other language modules, they will be found here. But in this case, I only have one, and it'll just be showing the English United States. Let's now go back to the previous screen.
Languages and input. Settings, button, in list.
Okay, we move on down.
On-device recognition, on-device speech recognition.
On-device recognition. In other words, if you've downloaded or added any languages to the above item, which is the speech services, then you will see those in here for your offline recognition. If I tap here, you're not going to see any because I only have one, and besides that one, you're not going to see any more. Let's move on down.
Text-to-speech output.
Here's text-to-speech. And you could go in here and change your TTS engine. Choose whichever one it is you want to make your default. Moving down.
Tools, heading. Showing items 1 to 11 of 15.
We come across the Tools heading. And here are the items we find beneath the Tools heading.
Spell checker, Gboard spell checker.
We hear spell checker followed by the word Gboard spell checker, meaning that's my default. Now, if you've installed other keyboards that have spell checkers, if you tap here, you'll see those. Let's tap here and see what I'm talking about.
Spell checker. Navigate up, button, out of list.
And to the right, we got
Use spell checker, switch, on.
Use spell checker switched on. And
Languages, use system languages, in list.
we got Use system languages.
Default spell checker, Gboard spell checker.
We here default spell checker is Gboard. Now, if I have other keyboards as I indicated, if I tap here, I should be able to see that. Let's go ahead and tap here.
Choose spell checker. Gboard spell checker, checked, in list.
So the Gboard spell checker is checked. Let's see if I have any more.
Open board spell checker.
I have the open board spell checker. That's all I have. So if I wanted to switch to open board, then I tap on that to check it as my default spell checker. Let's go back
Spell checker.
and back
Default
again.
spell checker. Languages and input. Spell checker. Gboard spell checker, in list.
Next, below that spell checker, we've got
Personal dictionary. Add words to be used in apps such as spell checker.
here we come across personal dictionary. So in other words, if there are some words that you would like to add to it, then you tap here to add those. Here's what I'm talking about.
Personal dictionary. Navigate up, button, out of list.
And putting my finger down,
Personal dictionary. You don't have any words in the user dictionary. To add a word, tap the Add Plus button.
I am told that I do not have any words in the personal dictionary, and if I wanted to add any, then I tap on the plus. And that plus button is found on the top right corner, and that will say Add.
Add.
There's the add. Let's tap here for example.
Type a word. Add to dictionary. Type a word, edit box.
So you type the word you want, and then below that, we have something called shortcut, and it's optional.
Optional shortcut, edit box.
So for example, let's say I wanted to create a word FICE or something stupid like that, F-I-S-E, and I want to create a shortcut for it. I could just type either F-I or F-E, and whenever I type that, then I should be able to auto-complete that. I don't want to add any word now, so I'm going to go back,
Personal dictionary. Add.
and we'll go back.
Languages and input. Personal dictionary. Add words to be used in apps such as spell checker, in list.
The last item on this screen is
Pointer speed.
pointer speed. If we tap here, I think the default is like 50%. Let's go ahead and check.
Pointer speed. Cancel, button, out of list.
We heard cancel, put my finger down.
Pointer speed, slider, 50%.
It's 50%, and if you want to increase it, you swipe up with one finger, decrease it, swipe down with one finger. Let's go back now.
Languages and input. Pointer speed,
I'm going to go back again.
system, languages and input.
We're back to languages and input. Now, moving down,
Live translate, on.
live translate is on, and that's if you are maybe hard of hearing or you have some hearing difficulty, you could turn this on so that whatever is being said would be translated or transcribed to you via text. Moving down,
Gestures.
gestures. And here's where you go in to choose different gestures. For example, you want to switch to the system navigation system, or you want to change to the 3-button navigation, or you want to set the camera gestures and all of that. Here's the place that you go into. Let's go here real quick.
Gestures. Navigate up, button, out of list.
And here are the items we find on this screen.
Gestures. Quick tap to start actions, on access your digital assistant, in list.
So something on the Pixel phone, we have the quick tap, that is you double tap on the back of your phone, and you could assign that to whatever it is that you want. In my case, I've assigned it to activate my digital assistant, and that will be the Google Assistant. You could even choose to launch an app using that if that's what you want. Next.
Quickly open camera, on.
Next.
Flip camera for selfie, on.
Next.
System navigation, gesture navigation.
I got mine set to gesture navigation. If I wanted to change to a 3-button navigation, for example, I'll tap here and go choose the 3-button navigation or 2-button navigation. Next,
Tap to check phone off.
tap to check phone off. So in other words, if you set up your phone and you notice that every time you touch your phone and it comes on, this is where you come to turn that off. I have mine turned off because I don't want my phone to be coming on every time I mistakenly tap my phone. Next,
Lift to check phone off.
lift to check phone is off. I have also turned that off. But by default, when you set up your phone, that's going to be on. So every time you lift up your phone, it's going to pop up and show up the screen. Next,
Flip to shish on.
flip to shish. In other words, someone calls you, you can just flip the phone over and that will just silence that call. Next,
One-handed mode off.
one-handed mode. If you want to use it with one hand, you turn this on. Next,
Press and hold power button. Access digital assistant.
press and hold the power to access the digital assistant. If you don't want that, but you want it to perform the traditional thing that the power button does, in other words, when you hold it down, you want it to shut off your phone, then here's where you tap to go change that. I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Press and hold power button. Navigate up button out of list.
And I'll put my finger down,
Press and hold power button to access heading in list.
and the items are
Not selected. Power menu.
power menu. So if I tap that, that would change to the power menu so that every time I hold down the power button, it'll show me the power menu and I'll see things like restart, shutdown, emergency, and so forth. Or
Selected. Digital assistant.
selected digital assistant. And below that,
Press and hold duration. Adjust sensitivity by choosing how long to press and hold the power button, short, long.
so you can choose here how long you want to hold it for before the assistant comes on. And
Press and hold duration, slider, 50%.
you got the slider at 50%, and you can increase it or decrease it, and that makes it either longer or shorter. Go down,
Power menu. Press the power button and the volume up button at the same time.
and it's telling you that if you want to get to your power menu, what you need to do is hold down both the up volume and the power button to bring up the power menu. That's the last item here. Let's go back.
Gestures. Press and hold power button, access digital assistant, in list.
And let's go back.
System. Gestures, in list.
We continue from gestures now, and the item below that is
Date and time, GMT-7 hours.
date and time. Next,
Backup.
backup. We've covered this elsewhere. You can go in here and do some backup. Tap on backup now if that's what you want to do, things like that. Next,
System update, updated to Android 13.
system update. If you tap here, you could find at the bottom where it says check for updates. Next,
Rules, 0 rules.
rules. You could tap here to check your rules and things like that. Next,
Multiple user.
next we have multiple users. In other words, if you have more than one user, you'll see them right here when you tap on this. Next,
Reset options.
reset options. In other words, whether you want to reset your SIM card, you want to reset your network, or you want to reset the system in general, what we call the factory reset, this is where you tap to go do such. And that's the last item that we find in system, languages, gestures, time, backup, etc. I will now hand you over to the podcast crew as we discuss some of these items that we find to be of great importance.
I mean, there's so much in here where I think there are particularly useful things from an accessibility standpoint, perhaps, or particularly depending on which sort of phone you have, is in the gesture settings. So here, for instance, as you'll know, might be where you go to restore or get rid of the navigation bar on the bottom of your phone, the home back and recent or overview buttons? Do you like those, or do you like gestures? Perhaps even more relevantly for TalkBack users, certain phones, particularly it seems to be ones manufactured in China, have gestures which prevent you using the TalkBack Braille keyboard. So it's an issue on Xiaomi, it's an issue on OnePlus, it may well be an issue on the brands such as Oppo. I haven't had a look, but what you might find is that some of the gestures associated with three fingers won't work on the TalkBack Braille keyboard, say typing an L, for instance, because they've already been captured to do something else. And if you're finding that's the case, then this will be where you go in and see what's assigned to a three-finger gesture and perhaps go and turn it off.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Ed, because you are talking about your Xiaomi, the cat, as I call it, and you are having that problem, weren't you?
I was, and there were two culprit three-finger gestures that were assigned to do different things in relation to screenshots. And I went in and killed one of them, thinking that would fix it, but it didn't. So I had to go in and kill the other one. And now L and dots 456 are working absolutely fine. But that is, if you are finding things that appear to be conflicting with TalkBack, this part of settings will be where you go and fix it.
And, talking about that, I remember that there was a time I was running a Motorola phone, and the motor gestures sometimes are also different if you have a Motorola phone. And you go in here and you don't find it. And so if you have a Motorola phone, for example, and you're having that, your screen coming alive and you can't find it anywhere in the settings, you need to go to the apps drawer, and then you're going to find something about motor gestures or motor settings. And that's how you go about disabling that. It's very important that one knows that, because if you don't, whether you have a phone in the pocket and the phone is getting knocked around, the phone is coming alive, wasting your battery. So if you set up a new phone, for example, you want to make sure that you go in here and really customize that, turn those things off, unless, of course, you want it. You want to see things when you pick up the phone, then you can allow it to be there. But just keep in mind that while you have it in the pocket and it gets knocked around something or something bumps against it, your phone is going to be coming alive, and that's a battery killer.
Some phones even have the wave gesture that I've heard. When you wave around the screen, maybe in the prop sensor, then the phone comes alive.
There's an app called Wakey if you need your phone to stay alive.
There you go. So you keep Wakey. So I think that may be even more of a thing to use, because you can be in control. But this by default, especially on Pixel phones and Motorola phones, I don't know about Nokia phones. I haven't been playing with those a lot, but those things are on by default, and you want to turn them off if you don't want them coming alive. Like it says, staying alive. I don't want you staying alive. I want you to come alive when I want you to, not when you choose to randomly, like some ghost hiding behind my phone. I don't want that.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me is the lift to wake, because I don't want my phone announcing to everyone that I've picked it up, Because TalkBack's on, and as soon as I pick it up, it starts talking, and I'm like, maybe I didn't want the room to know I picked up my phone.
I actually like the lift to wake feature.
Yeah, so do I.
It's kind of saved my ass a few times, because if my hands are full, I may not always be able to, activate my screen. So if I just lift it up, I have one finger ready to go scroll mode, so I can just unlock it and it's good to go. So it's one less thing for me to have to do. But on the other hand, I actually completely understand why you would not want it to be announcing every time you pick it up.
Yeah, I like that you can change it, because, for example, if I'm visiting my family or something, I might want to switch it off, and then when I come home, I might want to turn it back on or something. I had a question for you, actually, Warren, about your demo, which was you've got the voice assistant set up for your power button. And so it said to get your power menu, I think it was volume up and power key together. But isn't that normally the talkback shortcut? So how does that?
Only on Samsung phones.
Oh,
The Pixels don't have that shortcut for an accessibility
The
service.
what? Sorry, John. The what phones don't have that shortcut?
Pixels or any other. I know you like to pick on Pixels, but
John,
Android phones have. Even beautiful Sony phones don't have this accessibility shortcut.
Yeah, it was
Really?
your Pixel. No,
it's only a Samsung. So how do you turn talkback on and off quickly on the other phones then?
the 2 volume buttons. What Samsung gives you is 2 hardware shortcuts.
Oh, okay, that's the one I used for Braille back on on my phone, where talkback Braille makes it crash right at the moment, which is very annoying.
So what Samsung's really good at is you have 2 hardware accessibility shortcuts. So you can have one for talkback, one for G-Shuo. Or whatever your second accessibility service is. Every other Android phone only has one hardware shortcut, albeit you can have the accessibility button and other stuff. But Samsungs are good for that.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I've only used Samsungs really in the recent years, so I didn't realise. It's like the up volume key to answer calls. That's a Samsung thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
Yeah, they're nice. See, this is why I like them.
Yeah.
So shall we then say kudos to Samsung for doing things, going the extra mile? Just like we've always said, I think Samsung, a lot of times, though, people give them less credit, but frankly, I think they've done some very good things, because if you have 2 screen readers, like you guys just mentioned, you have that Joshua screen reader on there, for example, then of course you want to be able to quickly access that when you want to use it, or whatever other screen reader you may have. So I think I like what Samsung is doing.
Yeah, it is. It's good.
I definitely prefer it. Like I noticed when I had the Pixel, I was kind of missing that feature from having the ability to use multiple commands. So going back to Samsung, it was amazing, because I didn't realize how much I used 2 different hardware commands to activate different features.
What was your other one, Doug? What was your, apart from talkback? What did you have as your other hardware?
I actually had the magnification set up to a hardware control.
Oh, good idea. If you can.
So instead of doing like the 3 single finger triple tap, I would just have it set up to a control.
That's easier, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Less wear and tear on your screen too.
The only thing I don't like about, now I love that Samsung added the additional hardware shortcut, but I wish they had the 2-finger or two button volume hold down shortcut. I wish it was as quick as the Pixel, because on the Pixel you only have to hold the volume keys down for like a second, but on Samsung devices you have to hold it down for like 3 seconds.
A long time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a big difference.
It's annoying.
Yeah, and it's not just the Fisher Prices where it's quick. It's all other Android phones that aren't Samsungs.
Right, but my response to that would be first world problems, really.
I wonder if it has to do with some other built-in accessibility, like aspects that Samsung puts into phones. So I wonder if it's maybe a case of they have something else set up in the back end that requires the extra time for talkback.
It might be, but it might just be a holdover that they never corrected, because when Talkback first introduced like the 2 volume hold down, it was, I don't remember what version of Android it was, but it did make you hold it for 3 seconds. I remember being,
I think it was Oreo,
frustrated with that.
Probably it was Oreo version.
Yeah.
And then so I think whenever they shortened the holding of it, Samsung just never shortened it with everyone else for whatever reason. They just left it how it was.
And I think the slight issue with it is that, obviously you have to hit them simultaneously, and most of the time that's fine. But you get a fairly instantaneous feedback if that's what you have or haven't done on a non-Samsung phone. On Samsung, you're waiting. So for some reason, if you've got a slightly dodgy case, or you didn't hit it quite right, what you might have done on a Samsung before TalkBack kicks in after your 3 seconds is radically change your volume either up or down.
Done that before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then the
and it's
phone
exacerbated on
shouts at you.
Samsung. Well, yeah, or doesn't, or
Yeah.
doesn't. So that's the slightly annoying thing on Samsung about the delayed feedback.
If it was first introduced in Oreo and you had to press the volume buttons for 3 seconds, do you think that was, to exercise your fingers a bit more because of all the cookies involved?
I think it's just the way the cookie crumbled.
100%.
Yeah, exactly.
In as much as I like what Samsung has, and this is my fault. So I had talked about the Verizon giving a 30-day free trial, 100 gigs and all of that. So I installed my Verizon app on my phone, and so I could try it. I installed it on my S21, and I called my friend on it. And typically for me, when I'm on a call, I always shut off the screen. So I hit the power. And so I hit that power and I hang I cut him off.
We knew exactly where that was going.
So I'm like, oops, I'm sorry. So I had to go in there and turn that off. That's the one thing I don't like. I never, ever, ever use the power button to end my calls because for me, though, I prefer to have my phone screen off.
Yeah, never say never, Warren.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's actually why I liked how the proximity sensor kicks out your screen.
Yeah, but no, I want to shut off my screen, turn off the screen, when I'm on the call. Yeah, the proximity sensor does come on, but there are times you move the phone away a little bit and it comes on and you hear it speak. You don't want to. So for me,
I turned that off.
I always shut off my screen whenever I'm on, whether it's a regular call, a Google Meet call, whatever type of call it is, I turned the whole screen off. So I didn't realize that was on by default on the Samsung phone, and I just hang him up.
Yeah, I've definitely done that before.
One of the things I didn't quite understand, well, not quite in the system gestures thing anymore, on that Verizon trial, is Verizon a GSM network as well now? Is it not just CDMA? And if it is, then how does it work on a non-CDMA phone?
So what happened is that you download an app, the My Verizon app, and so you're using an eSIM. So that's what it is. It's not a physical SIM, and Verizon supports both CDMA, I think, and you can get a Verizon phone and put in any SIM card in there; it will work. But they are still part of the CDMA, but that My Verizon app would let you download a SIM, an eSIM, and be able to just use it without the need of a physical SIM.
Wait a minute. CDMA networks still exist in North America?
Yeah.
Well, Verizon does.
Verizon does.
Yeah. And
I don't
Sprint,
think
this portion of T-Mobile, or the portion of T-Mobile that used to be Sprint, is also CDMA.
Wow. I don't think in Canada we have anybody running CDMA anymore.
We never have. Ours have always been GSM.
In reality, that actually surprises me that we still have CDMA networks, especially seeing how more and more carriers are knocking out even 3G networks. So,
yeah, well, there are some things about CDMA that are better than GSM. Let's be honest. When it comes to data, CDMA has a better support for data when you compare it to GSM.
I'd say CDMA can handle data better than 3G, but I mean, maybe that's why 5G is running on a higher bandwidth. I don't know. Like CDMA, I find very conflicting. It's got pros, it's got cons. Its biggest con was the ability for 911 tracking, but probably the better option is maybe the data aspect of it.
Yeah, so it's there, and I'm running that thing on my S21, and I'm thinking that maybe next month when it's up, I probably might be switching to Verizon on my Pixel phone because I could have, more data than what I have with Google Fi. I only have 1 gig a month, and it's $10 per gig if you want to increase. And so I think Google is being a little too greedy. So Google, don't take down my YouTube because I say you guys are greedy and stingy.
And how much is the Verizon for 100 gig or whatever it is?
Well, in the in-app thing there, though, I haven't looked up the plans, but $25 is highlighted at the top, and frankly, even if I have 10 gigs or whatever, for me that's more than enough because the only time I'm using that is when I'm doing something, like maybe we're mapping somewhere, using maps or whatever, or else when I'm at a working place or whatever, I'm in a Wi-Fi zone. So I'm not one of those people that want to use the mobile data just because I have it. If I'm in a Wi-Fi zone, I always revert to the Wi-Fi instead of using my mobile data. So that's why I've been able to have this 1 gig since 2015 from Google Fi.
You're going to be getting rid of Fi, are you? Oh, that's sad.
I'm sorry, girl, but I think I'm dumping you off.
Oh, dear. I'm going to be so sad.
Maybe on a second note, I should keep it because of you.
Yeah, I think you should. Yeah.
Well, maybe in a kind of, I know you can't do this with eSIMs necessarily, but in a dual SIM-alike context, you can keep Fi and have Verizon. But you can have more than one eSIM; they just can't be active at the same time.
No, on the Pixel 7 you can.
They can be active at the same time?
Yes. But you
can run your data from one and like all of your calls and SMS from another, can't you?
Yep. Can you have both simultaneously active for calls, or do you have to pick?
Yes, you can have both running. Yeah, the Pixel 7 does. So see, that's one of the better things about the Fisher Price you've been dumping on.
I'm sure others will be able to. It'll be a gap in my eSIM knowledge. It won't be a plus point of the Fisher Price, will it? Let's be realistic about this.
It'll never be the plus to the Fisher Price. It's always going to be
the operator
error for the other guys.
Oh my!
It's my mistake.
I got really excited about my phone, my phone that I've had for ages, my S20 FE, because it had settings for 2 SIMs. And then I realized, oh no, the second one has to be an eSIM, so I can't do, because we don't have eSIMs over here, do we?
Yeah, we do.
Do we?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Who does that?
They all do, except it's a bit of a joke to get one because in sensible eSIM scenarios, what you ought to be able to do is, funnily enough, do it all electronically. What you have to do for our eSIMs is to go somewhere and get a card and scan a QR code. So you need a physical bit of paper in order to then get your eSIM.
Really?
Which I think is a bit of a joke. It is a bit of but we do have eSIMs. All the networks have them. They just don't let you acquire them electronically. Once you've got it, it's fine, and you can re-download it again. But you have to scan little bits of paper.
Oh, how ridiculous! They don't publicize it really, though, do they?
No, probably not. To be fair, but they all do
have them because
no, we do.
When did they bring that in over here? Then quite recently, or
couple of years.
Really? Well,
yeah.
You should feel special.
Scan a QR code.
You should feel special. Your S20 FE can handle a dual SIM. Mine can't.
Only if it's the second one's an eSIM though. But yeah, it can.
Yep, mine can't.
Oh, it's a shame.
Have you got the same phone, Doug?
Exactly the same phone.
Yeah.
But the Canadian S20s didn't come with eSIM capabilities.
But you probably got a Snapdragon processor, whereas these didn't.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think the North American one does. I think we get the Exynos.
Yeah, I think that might be.
Is it Exynos or Xenos? I never know how they actually say it.
It's Exynos, EXY. Verizon app, it will give you a new number. So you'll have both your regular phone on there, and you can choose which one to make your default. That's how it works.
And it is a proper eSIM number. It's not voice over IP or anything like that.
No,
it's a
proper.
genuine number.
Yeah, and actually it even supports hotspotting. So I tried the hotspot yesterday, and it works.
What if you for example, I know somebody who has a French phone and a number and a British phone number. So what if he's normally phoning his French friends, but then he wants to phone me and I'm not in France, I'm in London, so he wants to use his British number. Could he, I mean, he doesn't have an Android phone, but this is just a made up thing. But could he say to somehow choose in his phone, this time I want to call from my non-default number?
Yeah, I've done a demo on this.
Or would he have to change the default one?
I've done a demo on this about how you deal with two SIMs. So the Verizon app won't be any different. You can have two behaviors. You can either have it, well, actually you can have three behaviors. You can have it so that it asks every time when you make a call.
That could get annoying.
It could. You can have it so that it defaults to 1, or for contacts saved, you can assign a default SIM per contact. So for all his French mates, he can go in and go, you know what? Hockey, I don't want to use my anglais, my numéro anglais here. I want to set it up so that it utilizes my French number.
Yeah.
La du Paris. You know?
Yeah.
And even in the messages app, you'll have a little drop down right next to the send button. You can change which SIM you're sending it from, and it'll remember for each conversation which SIM you last sent. So
that's
you
really
just change
good.
it per conversation.
Unless you accidentally change it to the wrong one, then that's quite bad. But
yeah,
that's your fault.
and that can happen quite easily, by the way, in messages. That is easily done.
And that's not bad feed. That is freaking hilarious.
What about WhatsApp?
WhatsApp doesn't use your SIM anyway.
WhatsApp doesn't care what you use. All it needs is data.
Yeah, it just uses data.
It's a data network. It needs a phone number, but it uses data rather than the actual number.
So if you've got two accounts, will it get the ones off both of them, or will it only let you have one if you've got two SIMs?
Because it doesn't use the SIM, so you can only log in with WhatsApp.
One account.
Messenger is different. Messenger lets you use two accounts or more, but WhatsApp doesn't.
That's a bit annoying.
Yeah. I'll tell you why messages can easily be thrown off. So my wife did this just the other day. Because I'd rung her on the wrong SIM, so I have two SIMs. We used one for some reason. I'd phoned her on the wrong one. She rang me back. The voicemail missed call thing on O2 said, or whichever network it was, you've missed a call, and that threw out our whole text message conversation and threw the entire conversation onto the wrong SIM card.
Oh dear.
Because a message had been sent. I had to change it back, which is sort of fine, but it's a bit fiddly on messages. It's not as easy as it is on calls. I did switch it, but a call to your other number can chuck out a whole text message conversation if you have text alerts for missed calls.
But presumably it wasn't like a Canadian number or something.
No, they
you hadn't spent a load of money by accident.
Oh no, it just meant messages.
You could though.
It's the iMessage equivalent of, has it gone to the email or the phone, and it's all got thrown out of whack. So you just have to go and correct it.
Another thing that I like about this system settings, it has to do with that language thing and the spell checker. I think these things are important. I didn't realize that my open board was actually part of that. I didn't realize that open board has a spell checker. I haven't used that keyboard in a long time because I was simply trying to test it to see how it works, and it wasn't quite accessible, and I actually forgot to uninstall it. And it's funny to see that they're showing up alongside with the Google keyboard as a choice from which I could choose from as a spell checker. So that was a shocker to me.
Something that I thought while I was listening to your demo was what annoys me quite a lot with using Braille at the moment with my Braille display with TalkBack is that works really nicely. But when I turn off my Braille display, what I really like is it to go back to my QWERTY keyboard because that's what I like. And it doesn't. You've picked TalkBack Braille, so it has this Braille thing on the screen. And I know a lot of people love it. I don't love it at all. I just don't. And I wish there was a similar thing, like, you know, you had physical keyboard in there, which is for like a Bluetooth keyboard. But I wish there was a differentiation between like TalkBack Braille display keyboard and TalkBack on screen Braille or something. I'd really like it if they
I
would
totally
do that.
understand what you're talking about, Fee, and I can see why it defaults to the on-screen because that thing is powered by that on-screen keyboard of the Braille TalkBack. So if the physical part is turned off, then it falls or defaults back to the on-screen keyboard. But
I want it to regard it as two separate ones, like it does with QWERTY on the screen or QWERTY on the Bluetooth. If it can do that, I'm sure it could.
I can see where you're coming from. It would make sense that if I disconnect the hardware keyboard, I want the regular default keyboard that is the whether it's Gboard or whatever QWERTY keyboard to come on just the way it behaves when we hook up a physical keyboard to it. So I can see where you're coming from, but I kind of like the ability to change that spell checker if you find out that one is not working for you. And then another second thing that I like is that personal dictionary. So if I have a word that is always being flagged as incorrect or not recognized word, I could use that and say, hey, this is part of my dictionary now. And so if I'm typing something and I come across this, just recognize it as one of the words that I have chosen. So if you have some language that's not being recognized, you want to go into that personal dictionary and include that in there. And the beauty here, too, is that you can even include a shortcut so that you can quickly just bring that word up without having to type the whole thing.
So might that be things like BTW for by the way, or if you wanted.
But
it could be
you could do it
anything
for
you want,
anything. So like if you have, you could say like ADDR be the shortcut for like your full address. Like if you don't want to have to type out your full address that often, like if you're sending it to somebody or something like that. So you can really do it for anything.
Then if you ever want to write the word adder without an E, you'll be stuck because it's going to put your address in.
Yeah, that would be weird.
The next thing is the offline recognition. So in other words, if you want to be able to do things offline with your particular TTS or language pack, for example, you realize sometimes when you have your phone off in an airplane mode and you try to do something, and it will tell you, hey, I can't do this. And even though it's something that doesn't require the internet or something of that nature. So this is where an offline recognition would come in. And so if you don't have one, you probably should, most especially if you are a bilingual person and you kind of speak other languages and you from time to time want to switch to the other language and say something in that language. And if you don't have that offline recognition, then you may run into a problem.
Is it there by default now for your first language anyway?
Yeah, your first language should be there by default. But if you have other languages that you use, they are not on there by default. So you have to download those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite handy for things like if you want to put your phone on Do Not Disturb or something. but you haven't got a signal. To
Yeah,
go online.
especially
It's quite good for that sort of thing.
airplane mode. Yeah, things like that.
Well, or you just don't have a signal. You have to somewhere in the countryside or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a
So-
voice dictation thing, is it? It doesn't go beyond that, does it?
What
I
do you
don't
mean
think
beyond
it goes. It does. It's mainly for voice dictation.
Yeah.
But of course, if I want to say something, like, hey, what's my battery status, for example? So if it's that language that I'm using and I don't have that language pack, it's not going to understand what I'm talking about. So
Yeah,
it's useful for your voice dictation, and it's also useful for things of that nature.
Yeah, any voice commands. So like if you're in an app and it has a search button, like a voice search button, that usually ties into Google Speech Services for the voice recognition. So things like that you'd also be able to do offline if you have the language saved.
But of course, the things that wouldn't work are anything you need to go on. So asking it the weather, that's not going to work.
No, it's not going to work because it's going to tell you need to be
can't-
on the internet, but
Yeah.
it will tell you that in that language that you
Yeah.
have asked
Yeah.
it in.
It
It
will
will
know what
understand
you
what you're
asked.
saying, but it won't. Yeah,
But it
exactly.
can't then, yeah.
So offline language packs, I think, are very important if you have other languages that you speak. But by default, even if you speak just one, that one is downloaded for you by default.
What is that pointer speed? What's that for? What device is that? Presumably it's not on the phone by default. So what's that? Because I was a little bit puzzled by that.
That just refers to the mouse pointer speed. So if you have a mouse connected to your phone, the higher the speed, the less you would have to move your mouse to get the pointer
People
to cover
connect-
the whole screen.
People connect mice to their phone.
Yep, you can
Wow.
connect
Yes.
a mouse and a keyboard. That way you can interact with it. Well, obviously this is mainly for sighted people, but you can
Of course, yeah.
interact with it without having to touch the screen. If you have, like one of those keyboards where you can sit the phone on the keyboard.
I knew somebody who had it usually was older people who I knew that had dexterity issues, and they used one of those things instead of a mouse with a ball underneath it. It had a big ball on the top that you would touch with your hand rather than moving the whole device. It just rolled the ball, and then it had buttons on. So I guess if you had accessibility needs like that, could be something like that could be quite useful as well, couldn't it?
And you can make bigger,
connect
more
to your
sweeping. But you can make bigger, more sweeping gestures with a mouse under the palm of your hand than you can with a finger
True.
on a screen.
And
so
I suppose it's habit as well. If you're used to using a mouse, I mean, it's not many people on blind Android users probably, but if you're used to using a mouse, it's nice to have that continuity, I guess, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, because some keyboards do have inbuilt, mice or mouse, whatever.
Well,
And so
some
if
of
you
them.
have that, hooked up to your phone, via
Yeah.
Bluetooth or whatever. So instead of, touching the screen where the keyboard cannot reach, you could just use that mouse to touch that. So it's a very useful tool, especially for sighted people, as you've indicated.
Yeah. So that's what it's for.
The thing I'd like to see in here, and admittedly it is a bit of a niche case, but when I first got my Xiaomi, it didn't have orthodox kind of screencastings. So when I connected it to my computer, what I found was it was mirroring instead, and that meant my computer keyboard was controlling the phone, which has its advantages, but it also meant I couldn't control my computer because obviously my computer keyboard was controlling the phone. And what I'd like to see in systems and gestures is a way to disable the hardware keyboard. And there isn't one. If a hardware keyboard's connected, it's going to work. It relies on you disconnecting the keyboard or turning the keyboard off instead of being able on the software end to disable the hardware keyboard. And I would like to see that in mirroring situations.
So when the Sony phone was connected to the computer, did you not have that same issue then with the keyboard?
And that's because casting and mirroring are different things. I've now fixed it on the Xiaomi as well because there's a hidden settings app which can make it not do that. But screen mirroring and screen casting weirdly behave in different ways. So if normally when you like if you're using a Chromecast or something and casting it from your phone to the TV or something, you won't have that problem. It was the fact that
you're just sending the screen content, aren't you?
Which is all I wanted to happen, but it wasn't what the Xiaomi was doing. But I think it would be good if there was a way, admittedly a fairly niche scenario, to have it so actually on the phone you can just disable the hardware keyboard from the phone, but it wouldn't let you do that.
That is quite niche, though, isn't it? Because most people connect a keyboard because they want to use it.
But I wasn't connecting a keyboard.
Why would you?
I wasn't. I was connecting a laptop, so I wanted to mirror the phone to the laptop. It was an incidental thing that meant the laptop keyboard was then taking over the phone. It wasn't the intended behavior.
But maybe that needs to be a setting to do with computers then, rather than keyboards.
But there isn't a setting.
That's what I mean. Maybe that's what they need.
I don't know if that would fix your problem, because it might make your keyboard do nothing, because it would still route it, like it still wouldn't let you use it on the PC. It would be trying to use it with the phone, and then the phone would just be ignoring it. Maybe. I don't know how it would work, but that's a possibility.
I don't know. It seems like it should be fairly fixable to me, and it would involve making it not use the phone.
People do use the phone with their PC, don't they? But that's probably through a different way than
differently. Yeah, typically that's when a connection is established between the phone and PC, like to write messages, but they're not being written on the phone as such.
My mum does, and she writes her texts and stuff. She's got a Samsung phone, and she loves it, and she's fine with that.
Yeah,
but I think she can go away from that window and start doing her normal emails and things on the machine, on the laptop.
Yeah, that's right.
So it sounds like you couldn't move away. Sounds like
and the keyboard's not taking over the phone in that instance. It's just sending stuff to the phone.
Yeah, which is different. Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah,
your mom isn't. She's using Link to Windows. She's not casting.
She is, yeah.
So Samsung phones suffer from the same thing. They actually do use mirroring. They call it Smart View or something. So if you were to use Smart View from a Samsung phone, you'd have the same problem. The keyboard on the computer would take.
And this, people, is why I use Dex.
But she seems to be okay.
Yeah, but she's not casting. She's not mirroring. That's the thing. She's just connecting her phone. Yeah. They're just communicating to each other over the Wi-Fi is all that's happening.
So the phone is the keyboard is controlling the computer. It's just that data's being sent
from it when she goes into that phone window.
Yeah.
Yes, and she did a thing a bit like Warren cutting somebody off earlier on. I rang her up and she said, "Hang on, let me just do this on the computer." And next thing I know, she cut me off. I rang back, or we got back on the phone. She said, "Oh, sorry, I just closed the window on the laptop and it was the wrong one. I cut you off."
Exactly.